Today I want to continue talking about teamwork by looking at the book of Nehemiah. And as we look at the book of Nehemiah, we will discover, I believe we will discover, what can happen when the entire team has a mind to work. Nehemiah will illustrate this for us as to what can happen when ordinary men and ordinary women get on the same page to accomplish the same goals. I want you to catch ordinary men and ordinary women, because we don't need a whole lot of folk with a whole lot of degrees and a whole lot of pedigree to follow in order to do some major stuff for God. All we need is some ordinary men and ordinary women who acknowledge the fact that, God, I don't know a whole lot, and God, I may not be able to do a whole lot, but whatever I am able to do, I give it all to you. The text says, so built we the wall, because the people had a mind to work. As we look at the book of Nehemiah, we find that the book of Nehemiah is a fulfillment of God's promise to restore Israel to her land after 70 years of being forced to move into a strange land called Babylon. For 70 years, the people of Israel were in Babylon, and their city, Jerusalem, was destroyed. After a period of time, some people returned to Jerusalem, but Jerusalem was now a city without walls, and it was a city without protection. When chapter 1 of Nehemiah opens up, Nehemiah is receiving the report that the Jerusalem wall was broken down and its gates burned with fire. When Nehemiah heard these words, he sat down and he wept and he mourned and he fasted and he prayed before God. But in chapter 2, Nehemiah gets permission from the king to return to Jerusalem and to rebuild the wall. The work to rebuild the wall begins if you look in chapter 3. And in chapters 3, verses 1 through 13, we see people working together to rebuild the wall. I want you to look at something when you get an opportunity. Some 28 times in chapter 3, we see the phrases next to him and next to them and after them. Next to them, the men of Jericho built. Next to them, Zechar, the son of Imri, built. The son of Haggag made repairs. What does this suggest? Everyone did what he or she was gifted to do, but catch this, and they worked side by side. Y'all didn't catch that. Next to them, they did what they were gifted to do, and after them, they did what they were gifted to do, and they worked in sections. And so therefore, you did not have folk working in areas that they were not gifted to work in. You didn't have anybody working on a roof if their expertise was foundation. You didn't have anybody working on walls if their expertise was gates. And all I'm trying to say that if the church is to ever make the kind of impact that the church needs to make, we need some folk who don't have a problem working side by side and doing what they have been gifted to do. It's a terrible thing to have somebody doing something that they're not gifted to do. Got a youth director don't like children. Got a pastor who don't like people. You don't hear what I'm trying to say. You've got to be gifted to do whatever God has gifted you to do. Don't you worry. If you are a believer in this house today, then God has gifted you to do something for the kingdom, but you've got to be willing to acknowledge your gift and then get in the trenches and work side by side with somebody. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they come from. It doesn't matter what kind of income they have. All you know is that God has given us a great work, and if we're going to accomplish it, we've got to get together and work side by side. Chapter 3 helps us to understand that our work must have purpose. I'm in Bible country, because if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 31, when you get a chance, it says, whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Whether we eat or drink, whether we sit or stand, Whether we usher or sing, whether we teach or preach, we have to do it all for the glory of God. And that's one thing, believers, that helps us move forward in our task, is that we understand that whatever we're doing, we're not doing for the glory of men, but we're doing it all for the glory of God. We're doing it because we know that God is the real rewarder of our task. But chapter 4 opens up with the work being criticized. So often criticism is what causes most of us to sit down and to quit working. And in chapter 4, 3 characters are being identified for doing most of the criticism. And can I tell somebody something? When there's a whole lot of mess going on, it usually ain't a whole lot of folk. It's just a few vocal folk. And so in this instance, it wasn't a whole lot of folk. Notice who these people were. They were Sanballat, Gershom, and Tobiah. Now Sanballat means hatred in secret. And he was the main man behind most of the attacks. And friends, you and I may as well deal with reality. We have a whole lot of Sanballats in our midst. They're hating in secret. Oh, y'all didn't catch that? Mama said they throwing rocks and hiding their hands. When you see them, they're smiling in your face, but all the time want to take your place. When you see them, they're smiling in your face, but when you don't see them, they're hating you in secret. Or if we could get past folk hating in secret. Somebody said today, I'd rather have enemies than have friends, because at least if I have enemies, I know where they are. I know who they are. I know what they're thinking, and I know what they're feeling. The rough thing is to have folk who call themselves your friend, but in reality, when you ain't looking them in the face, they're stabbing you in the back. Don't know what they'll smile at you today. Oh, girl, you know, you remember in Living Color. You remember, ain't nobody watching Living Color but me. They was always stabbing, talking about Miss Jenkins. Hey, Miss Jenkins. Y'all ain't seen it. Y'all ain't, I'm the only one with the How you doing, Miss Jenkins? Better nobody mess with Miss Jenkins. That's my girl. Better nobody mess with her. Child, let me tell you about Miss Jenkins. And that's how we do so often in the church, so often in the body of Christ. Hey, pastor. Oh, that's my pastor. Hey, pastor. Child, let me tell you about him. And I know that I'm right about it. Sanballat means hatred in secret. But notice, if you will, in verse 2. How does Sanballat attack? He attacks the mind. He uses fear and depression and mockery and doubts to hate on those who were rebuilding the wall. And when people play on your doubts, when people play on your fears, if we are not careful, we will always quit. We will always sit down. Beware of people who are always telling you what you cannot do. Beware of folk who are always trying to tell you what you ought not do and what you don't think you can do. When people, that's how the enemy attacks. He attacks the mind. If he attacks how we think, then he touches what we will do. If he tells us that you can't rebuild the wall, you can't do that, then guess what? You'll never rebuild. You'll never do anything, because he attacks the mind.